I'm Tom. Welcome to Ledgemere. Today what we're going to do is I've got this old angle grinder. I think I bought it in like 1998, and the cord is finally given up the ghost. I've wrapped electrical tape over it a bunch of times, but it's really not safe. So this is only a bipole or a two-prong plug, and in order to fit the cord I've got this one with a ground on it, which is still fine. But the first thing I have to do is I have to disassemble the body of this, and this has like torque screws in it, but it also has a slot for a regular slotted screwdriver. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove these screws real fast. I was able to start the wood stove in here today, and it's not going very much, but it's enough so that I can at least work out here barehanded. So I've got to take this whole body off. There's 4 more screws that need to come off before I can disassemble this part. I actually have 2 of these, and I've probably gone through a dozen of these wire brushes on it, because the only thing I use this one for in particular is it's a snap-on. The only thing I use it for is grinding paint off, and it's kind of a pain to swap in between the wire brush and the grinding wheel, especially when the grinding wheel or the wire brush gets worn down. There's a couple devices on it that you can clamp on so it stops the arbor from turning. So I prefer, and I swap back and forth so much that when you're restoring old equipment and the bolts, if I can't get them off by heat, I will tend to grind them off. There. This is one of the reasons why people don't typically change the cords, because it's such a pain to get in there. The next thing I'm going to do is I've got this piece of cord that I'm going to salvage, and it's a little bit longer than what I used to have, but it seems like I always need an extension cord about this long for what I'm doing. So I'm going to put 2 of these guys on, one on each side. They have these shielded ones too. Generally, I like to do one on something like this. You can use both, but this will just keep the 2 sides from touching at any point. You have to think for a second which way you want this to go on. I'm going to cut this copper off here. Went to the hardware store and got one of these plugs, and it's already loosened up on this side. That's where the cord's going to go through. What I need to do is take the screws out of this end right here, and that will allow me to connect the wires onto this. And generally these have like you see the threads on it, they're really super coarse, so you don't have to twist it forever to get it where you need it. And make sure nothing falls out. When you look at these, this is one of the in my mind, one of the better quality ones, because you can see how it clamps in there like this. I don't like the ones where you wrap it around. I like the ones that clamp, and it seems like it's you get more surface area on it. When you start wrapping the wire just around a screw, when you screw it in tight, what happens is the wire kind of mushrooms out, and then you get little pitons hanging out all over the place. And especially with something like this where they're so close, you don't want any of those little stray wires touching each other. And the way that you look at these, you see this side here is silver, and that side is kind of a brass color, and then the ground here is green. So the way I remember this is white to bright. So you take your white conductor here, That goes on the bright. Green is ground, and then black is the one that's dark. So in order to not have to take this apart, it's very important to put all these pieces on. You have to think backwards. Otherwise you'll be taking it all back apart again. So let's strip just a little bit off these. So you probably only need like 1/4 of an inch. Sometimes you have to play with the wire in the jacket a little bit, and in the outside jacket, so you don't have all kinds of twists. So it's kind of like a thing, you got to hold it with your thumb and your fingers, start it, and when you get it almost snug, double check. And so I've got the jacket right up against there, and then screw this guy in. This should be a matching part inside, otherwise it won't come in snug. Alright, so that's done. And what I want to do is test this first before I put it all back together. So here's the thing, even though I've done this 100 times in my life, unfortunately this is just so old that what happened is when I put it back together, part of the brushes broke off. Which, if you look right here, so it has this little magnet that goes in there, and they both just disintegrated. So that's a shame. Could probably try to find some new magnets, but they don't give you a lot of wire here to put a new one in. So it only lasted me 23, 24 years. Well, that just goes to show that even on these YouTube videos, when everything is supposed to be euphoric and utopia, unfortunately, it was just something that should have been easy, done it 1,000 times. One thing I forgot to do before the start of the season was to take all these bolts out of here, and there's a cutting edge up underneath. This right here is a rubber squeegee, which works great on asphalt, but I don't have an asphalt surface. It came with this down, and what happened is I used to plow down to my sugar house, and over the course of 3 or 4 years I've destroyed this edge of the squeegee, and it's big enough so I could actually take it and flip it around and use the other side, but where I have a gravel driveway, it's kind of pointless to use the squeegee, so I'm gonna take the squeegee and recess it all the way, take the carbide cutting edge, bring it down here even with the skid shoes, or at least pretty close, and then I can scrape down the dirt. It's really done a poor job this year, and then I realized the reason was because I didn't put this down. So I'm gonna do that right now. It's kind of nice out today. It's in the 30s and it's sunny, so I might as well come outside and get this done. So it's not super safe generally to climb under a bucket, but as you can see, it's grounded. So I've got the bucket curled right now, and I'm gonna take these bolts all out. There's a lock washer on each one of them, so I gotta be careful not to lose that. siren you hear right now, I don't know if you do hear it, is the noon whistle up at the fire station. There used to be a similar one at the mill down the street, but there was a fire in the early 90s and it was damaged. We never got the parts to fix it, but they used to go off together. But with sound traveling a little bit, you know, the distance, you would actually hear one before the other, even though they were both in actuality going off at the same time. But those were the old noon whistles for the mill, so that people would know when it was time to take lunch. I think it was probably 1994 they were closing, I think it was Bitburg Air Base, Germany, and they wheeled all the tools from the flight line back to Spangdahlem Air Base. And they basically told me, whatever you want for tools, you can have it as long as you're not going to sell them and you only take what you need, which was pretty trusting, I thought. But I took a toolbox and some wrenches and some socket wrenches and stuff, and so it's kind of funny when it was time to board the plane to go back, that here I am pushing this red toolbox across the tarmac out to the plane. The pilot's got a kick out of that. Obviously I didn't drop anything. If you drop stuff on the tarmac, you have to like cease all air operations and then account for all your tools, which is why military and probably civilian aviation too, there's like a foam cutout for every tool, so you have 100% accountability. Just by looking at the box, you know that you have everything. One time when I was very young, we were on the runway. That was in Spangdahlem, Germany too. It was lunchtime, and I thought the other guy had closed up the back of the truck and the toolbox, and so we had this, it was a big mechanic's toolbox, you know, one of those ones that folds up on both sides, chock-a-block full of tools. And so it was on the tailgate, and I didn't realize, because the truck had a cap on it. So I hopped in, I said, "You all set?" And he said, "Yep." And so I took off, and I probably went about, I don't know, 500 feet, and I heard this crash, and I looked out back, and all the tools had fallen off the back of the truck onto it wasn't the runway though, thank God, it was the taxiway. But still, you had to go get all that junk picked up. And there was no foam cutout in that toolbox, there was just a paper checklist of all your tools. So we had to take the paper checklist out and get a pencil. We used to use grease pencils and check off as we found the pieces. So we missed lunch that day. Surprisingly, we didn't get really any trouble other than, well, we lost the lunch table. Everything's a hammer. And the time it took me to walk over and grab my camera, the sunset, it was a big ball right there. Right in that little valley right there, there was a giant ball of sun. And 3 minutes I was gone. Well, hopefully this has been at least mildly entertaining for you. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.